Okay, we're up and running pretty much. Now I'll just get down to. So we're happy enough with last week's and the introduction. You got the overview from Moodle, and more importantly, the assignments and the expectations from the assignments. Now I actually updated the physical documents on Moodle themselves, so the assignments are quite explicit as to what's required in each of the assessments in the psychometric tests. So hopefully you should start cracking away on those. They're due in the next couple of weeks, as far as I remember. Give or take. I don't have Moodle open here in front of me. There's no need for me. But at least anyway, all you need to know, but we're afraid to ask, is already up there, and you can start into the first suite of assignments. And I told you how to go about that. So you can always go back to the first video just to look at any commentary I have around them as such. So getting the show on the road for this evening. Let's jump. So now we're going to look at this evening, we're going to look at the first part of emotional intelligence. And yeah, it's fascinating area. Not just because I'm giving it, but generally speaking, it is a fascinating area. And watching people, observing people, and being in tune and trusting your gut feeling. It's there's no end to the source of entertainment you can have from that. But I'll just get the slides open and we can kick off in these. And so our emotional intelligence. Just let me resize this ever so slightly. Move it across the screen, and I go to. Just bear with me. Don't go anywhere. I'm still here. PowerPoints, and move them ever so slightly over that way. Better, better, better. Right. Having a look at this, you'll remember this from last week as I talked about these particular traits of leadership, and we went through each of these segments by way of explanation of what would be understood or perceived to be good leadership traits. Now, what we're going to look at now are these particular areas, the soft sides of leadership: the self-confidence, emotional stability, and cognitive ability. These are essentially the core to emotional intelligence as we understand it within leadership. It's not the broader picture of emotional intelligence where we're delving into our personas for personal connectivities and so on. I dealing strictly within the boundaries of professional and leadership perspectives in this case. So, and of course, fundamental to this is the honesty and integrity of yourself, and how honest we are with ourselves is really, really important. And you know, in some of my evaluation techniques with students, I would have asked them to grade their own papers. And really interestingly, of the number of times that I've tried this, and not on this particular module, you'd be delighted to know you're not getting off that lightly, but in other modules, it's remarkable how I would have graded them simultaneously and withheld the results and say, right, you grade yourselves. I would probably say, I'd be confident enough in saying that 100% of the students marked themselves lower than the mark that I was awarding them. Which was really, but I did have the fairness of the system. I said, whichever is the higher, I will give, you know. And there would have been one or two that would have chanced it. I deserve this because of this. And when they point out why, and when you look at learning rubrics and all this sort of stuff and the expected answers, blah, 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 they say, yeah, now I see it. But it wasn't anything new, because I borrowed that idea from somewhere else totally. And that was in appraisal systems and performance systems. where you sit down with your manager and you agree what you're going to do for the next 6, 12 months and so on, and then review what's done and how did you feel about it. And then they get the 360. If you're familiar with 360 performance appraisal systems, you'll get the opinions of colleagues, peers, and so on to give you feedback, and the aggregated response then is evaluated against your own response. And that's a key measure of how well you know yourself, is really how other people know you and see you. And being honest, and that's where your honesty and integrity becomes really powerful, is when you're absolutely truthful to yourself first. Then it becomes second nature to interact with people more effectively. So, and wow, the emoticons show their faces already. I mean, you have these on all your on all your apps nowadays, and I mean, I'm confused half the time. You know, is it laughing out loud, crying out loud, or whatever in some of these, or yeah, and again, it can mean different things in different cultures or different languages. But in any case, these simple emoticons here convey very clear messages in terms of how you perceive things. The top three are pretty straightforward, you know, happy, so-so, mediocre, meh, as you might say, or and then anger, and then the next level is sad. Then in between, do you want to move, or are you emotional, or and then the last one, very hard to read the last one. Is it a smile, or is it somebody thinking, or is it somebody asleep? You know, it's so again, it begins to dull the senses and dull and confuse how we interpret things. So you know, in multiple intelligence, if we look at all our different types of intelligences, we have verbal, mathematical, logical, spatial, kinesthetic, musical, and then our interpersonal skills, organizing groups, negotiating, personal connection, and social analysis. So the intra-psychic capacity is insight skills. And this is what we're trying to achieve, particularly the interpersonal skills. The upper ends, the upper skill levels of verbal, mathematical, and so on and so on. These would have been traditionally the psychometric tests that we used to evaluate intelligence. You know, how good were you mathematically, or how good at you spatial awareness and all this sort of stuff, and verbal understanding, blah blah blah. And they were very hardcore old things, but they were lacking this whole other area of emotional impact. And in reality, and also when we look at emotional intelligence, and particularly in reflective practice, you remember I said to you last week, reflective practice is, you know, essentially two words or two sentences. You know, what did we do previously, and how can we improve on the way we did what we did previously? Now, that's the hard side of it, should we say, the physical, the tangibility stuff that you can identify. The real impact or influence on our reflective process are also our emotions. How did we feel at those particular times? So we have to marry both of them together, because you could do something and you might be very practical and you might be devoid of emotion, or you might be highly charged, but you need to understand the emotions that were connected with the instance that you're referring back to or you're trying to reflect on, because they can have a very positive or negative impact on the process of your reflection. Are you following me on this? If you take another example, if you listen to, you hear, if you're like me and you like listening to real music from the 70s and 80s, after that it goes down tubes. It's only my opinion. I listen to any kind of music, to be honest with you. But in reality, if you listen to music, particularly music from your earlier years, you'll associate memories with that. So the music becomes a trigger, but also the emotion. So if you're listening to, she was going to be shot for saying, you're listening to Donny Osmond or any of those other type of characters, you're probably bringing back some of your first romances or something like that, you know, and how you felt. Ah, God, wasn't it love? No, I'm just no. Anyway, you're looking back at all of those type. It's conjuring up feelings with actual events. Okay, so that's the point, that no event is devoid of some level of emotion. And this is why we need to come forward to these interpersonal skills. How do we organize our groups? What worked before when you were working with a group? Can you use the same techniques before? What kind of frame of mind were you in when you were organizing a group or working within a group? What were you feeling as a member of the group? That's why the latter or the second set of assessments looks at leadership and followership and so on. So think of take note of the psychometric results, but also the emotions that you were using or you would have experienced, and when you're using the final part of assessment, which is the reflective report itself. But I'll be going into more and more detail in that in due course. So emotional intelligence, the inner and outer. Now, in synopsis, what I'm really saying here is, you remember I said that you have the ego, which is the person themselves, and the image they want to portray outwards. And I did say to you, and I will stand by it, that as much as 90% of communications are external projections, are non-verbal communications. And as a consequence, all the outer side will see through most of the barrier that you think you're putting up in front of you. Okay? So it's where you begin to intersect inside here, for example. That's where you begin, where you're on the same plane, where you're on the same channel for all intents and purposes. So we have that within the organization, within your community, whatever the context is that you're enacting. And remember, you will have different personalities in your home, in your social environment, in your work environment. You're lucky if both are one and the same, your social and work environment. Maybe not. I don't know. But in any case, we have different because we play to our own strengths. We bring out our own strengths, and sometimes it can be very beneficial. Say, for example, if you're playing with you're with a local rugby team and you're mixing well, you're doing this, that, and the other thing. Some of the learnings that you would have had in that experience, you can migrate into your work environment to work with your team as such, and without telling the team that, oh yeah, I play rugby the weekend and we're the hard as nails, and whether it's male or female, I know, Jesus, well, it doesn't particularly matter. In any case, you play rugby and it's a team event, and this is how we approach our games and so on and so forth. So don't overplay it like that, but you can use, by eliciting maybe their backgrounds, are they into sports and so on. So finding common ground is absolutely critical. And that's where we start to look at these intersections in terms of developing very powerful and strong emotional intelligence. Again, what are these basic emoticons? Again, we've already talked these. So if you look at these, you have glad, scared, mad, and sad. If you look at that, glad, scared, the quivery lip, that could just as easily be a sad, as is the bottom one. That could be quivery lips, sad. I mean, the two obvious ones there, glad and mad. These two could be interchangeable. And how do we pick up on these? That's so sometimes somebody is scared and have a smile, and I use the example of throwing a baby up in the air kind of thing. And don't mean the Michael Jackson style of balcony, right, like that, but the way, yay, all this, Jesus. Anyway, when you do that and the kid is smiling, it's fear. It's not it's not delight, as the psychologist would have us know. But so understanding these, so learned fearfulness, as we say, results in fear conditioning. So this is it's not quite the same as this concept of fight or flight. It's almost as if I turn this into a positive, learned fearfulness, it might be setting my own targets a little bit too high, that I want to achieve a little bit more than that I'm comfortable with at the moment. And that brings in an element of fear, possibly bordering, more precisely, a little bit of anxiety or a hint of being anxious about something. But you bring it on yourself. But it also can force you to be highly innovative. And, well, when I say force you, it enables you to be highly innovative, because you want to stretch and you want to find the quickest, most efficient and nicest solution to achieve that particular goal as such. do we all juggle several balls at the same time? Of course we do. You know, we have so many different things going on. And then if you sit back and say, well, how can I plan and organize this to such that I can hit all the objectives and do it with a quality that I set for myself, and that I wouldn't throw just any old rubbish out there just for the sake of getting the thing done. And that's where the integrity comes into it. So that this kind of learned fearfulness is setting the probably wouldn't agree with the actual name of fearfulness. More of objective setting, stretching the goals would be more precise. But it comes with this level of anxiety as such that we condition ourselves to be able to do. And it says here, think of someone you admire, whom you see as successful and are effective in their work, and why, and life, and then name the quality they possess. I suppose I could do the usual Zoom thing and create breakout rooms, and you go up and chit chat away and so on and so forth. But do I want to do that? No, I don't, because we have stuff to go through, and the best way to do it is probably by giving you some examples. And people I would have admired: Hitler, Gerry Adams, Barack Obama, my mother, my next eldest sister, my youngest sister. I've only got two sisters. Who else would I say? Terjo Nurmi, the fellow I talked about before. They'd be the names. And some people would say, oh God, we have a Nazi supporter as a lecturer. He's into Hitler. No. What I admire about him was, you have this little Austrian, about the same size as myself, moustache, small, black-haired, and he managed to motivate a whole other nation and get them driven under the Aryan race concept of tall, 6-footers, blonde and blue-eyed. That took some serious leadership. And if you look at his earlier careers, yes, he was quite capable. The end result is a whole other story, okay, and that's a given. Gerry Adams, why? Because in his day, when I've seen him in the debating and on discussion panels and so on, I admired the way he kept his cool. That's it. I'm not into the politics of one thing or another. It's just the way he portrayed himself. And if you remember correctly, you come back into one of the examples of the Late Late Show, and Gay Byrne standing down in front of the audience and letting Gerry Adams sit on his own of their famous interview. And I admired the way he was being segregated out into them and him. And it was the way he held himself together and cogently presented his points of view without roaring and shouting and waving hands around. It doesn't work anywhere, clearly. Obama has just this fantastic presence when he speaks. Phenomenal orator. And the list goes on, and other people and so on and so forth. Now, here's the key point: the qualities that these people possess. In your eyes, or in my case, in my eyes, when I'm talking about these characters, we admire them and we like to try and make them our own. The real point that you must understand here is, don't try and copy them, because other people will see straight through it. They know, you're trying to be Obama, you're talking to this and you're talking to that. You know the way Obama goes on? Poor Enda Kenny was notorious for that, and he tried to use the same, and it was, excruciatingly obvious what he was doing, and so on and so on. So the real point about it, there's an element in leadership, it may come up at a later stage, or Dave might even cover it, where we talk about the 3 M's: mission, mentor, and mirror. Okay, and just briefly, your mission is, what's your sense of purpose? Your own mission statement. Why are you being? What's your sense of being? Why are you here? What do you want to do for yourself? It's personal to you. You don't talk probably to anyone else about it, but you have your own reason for being. Raison d'etre, lovely French expression for mission statement. Your reason for being. Companies have mission statements. Why are they in the existence? The mentor, I'll come back to, and then the mirror. And all things being equal, and this is the integrity side of things and honesty and so on. If you make decisions in business or during the course of your day, can you actually sleep with those decisions at night? Some of us can make really harsh decisions and take very harsh courses of action that to other people might cringe or say, geez, that was a bit rough or whatever. But as long as you can justify to yourself why you made those decisions, being fully cognizant and aware of the same thing, of the impacts you're having on other people, and you can sleep with yourself with those decisions at night. That's your integrity and honesty coming to the forefront. Now, I don't mean to say that you have to be out and be all sorts of gung-ho and so on, but it could be anything in your working environment that you may have to make some crucial, harsh, or tough decisions that can cause you potentially sleepless nights. They do happen, of course. But in any case, that's the mirror side of it. Can you stand it, look at yourself and say, Mark, yeah, you know, you're doing well, you've done this, you've justified it, you looked at all the parameters, you thoroughly researched it, you have all the data, therefore your decision is sound. If you didn't have all the data and made a decision and it had negative impacts, then you wouldn't be too happy with yourself, to be honest with you. You'll know yourself, the levels of your own standings and levels of integrity and honesty. The middle one, the mentor. This can be misinterpreted and often is. The mentor, if, for example, you join a new company and you see Billy Joe over there. I hope there's no one called Billy Joe on the course. You have Billy Joe over there, and you know he's well got with everyone. You notice this in the first couple of days or first week or two, and you know, it's, geez, he, you know, great crack. He's well in he knows everyone and so on and so forth. Geez, I'd like to be like him and start acting like him. You don't know whether he's genuinely well in or whether he's the village idiot. Seriously. And you start to align your behaviors to that person, you could be going down an awful wrong path. Okay? So what I say is that you look at the various traits of people. So it's not one mentor. It'll be a number. So there'll be different characteristics of different people, past, present, that you would have encountered over the years. And you'll instinctively know what's good and what attracted you to that particular characteristic. Was it their facial expressions when speaking? Was it their tone of voice? Was it their hand gestures? Was it the content and their mannerisms? And so was it their dressed attire? You look at all of these, you pick up and instinctively pick up on these things. Something clicks with you and say, yeah, that caught my attention. And so isolate that and say, I'd like to be able to have that effect on people as that person has when he's interacting, and someone else and someone else. And so you're picking up all these different should we say aspects of different mentors, but you make them your own. Never ever try and copy them, because you will fail and fail miserably. I promise you that, because people will see it for what it is, just not you. It's a copy, it's a take-up, and it's immediately start branding you. Oh, he's trying to be like so-and-so, and he's trying to be like that, and so on. You make them your own. So you look at these, and here's the trick in it. If you see particular mannerisms, and you say, I like this and I like that, stand in front of a mirror and practice them. And you will instinctively get a feel for what's being copied and what's actually feeling more natural to you. Do you think these guys that go out on stage and making presentations, the Steve Jobs and all these guys, that all of that stuff comes overwhelmingly naturally to them? Absolutely not. These guys rehearse, they practice before they go out onto stage, before they give a new product launch and so on, how they're going to play the tech journalists and so on, how they're going to use the stage. Steve Jobs was phenomenal at that. And you know, one of his best examples, I'm sure you all have or would have worn either Wrangler or Levi jeans, and you have the small little pocket in the top part of it. And then when he was introducing the little Apple iPod, the MP3 player, and he pulled this out and he said, "I often wondered what this small pocket was in our jeans for," and this was the reason I put it out. And it was just a masterful stroke. It caught people totally unawares, but it that had that impact, and people remembered it. Anyway, they're the kind of things I'm talking about when we talk about naming the quality they possess. So I went off on a little bit of a tangent here to explain why it's important to understand these attributes that other people have, characteristics, what draws you to them, and why you're on the same wavelength that they're trying to transmit, and you tune in onto that same wavelength, and you can find that and say, that's the element, I need to make that, and try and make that my own, put my own version of it together for myself that you're comfortable with. Okay. So emotional intelligence, IQ does not predict success. Of course it doesn't. Absolutely not. So the capacity for recognizing our own feelings and those of others, for motivating ourselves, and for managing emotions well in ourselves and in our relationships. That's what emotion. That's this guy coming back again. Remember, I ended up with this guy, Daniel Goleman, last week with his saying about intelligence and emotional intelligence and intelligence, one without the other lost cause. And this is what he's alluding to here. I eventually found it, or a couple of versions of it. I've augmented your PowerPoint slides. I didn't send them up, but this is additional. And you remember this, I told you about the two guys' perspectives and emotional intelligence. You have a 6 and a 9. Now, we can ignore the first part. It says, but one of those people is wrong. Someone blah, 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 blah. What I'm really interested is in this second comment down here.
Sorry,
yeah?
Mark. We just can't see.
Oh, good point. Hang on, I'll drop myself down.
Sorry, no.
I'm so engrossed in what I'm doing, I forgot to check the monitor here. Obviously, I'm enjoying it. And obviously, so are you, that you want me out of the way to be able to see what's going on. Excellent. In any case, what I was saying, yes, the 6 and the 9 story that I was telling you about last week, and I dug out a couple of them, and I'm not particularly interested in this side of things here. It's the bottom one here. The bottom commentary is absolutely nails it. You know, people having an uninformed opinion about something they don't understand and proclaiming their opinion as being equally valid as facts is what is ruining the world. No one wants to do any research. They just want to be right. Where are you experiencing that right now? Don't say for me. No. Where are you experiencing that in your daily lives?
COVID.
Too deep. What aspects of your lives would you be experiencing or being exposed to that?
Social media.
Precisely, social media. Absolutely, and that's what's worrying. That's why they up the points for journalism for the universities to write even better bullshit. No, sorry. It's oh jeez, I'll be shot for saying things like that. But really, that's what it's come down to, and I find it extremely frustrating. I try to detoxify and stay off these. I go onto TikTok for the comedy. That's about it, and that, I need a little bit of relief. But that's really, this is what's happening. Everyone has an opinion, and the problem with it is that, it's not that I don't respect opinions. Of course I do, but I find that they're very shallow, and you will probably encounter that, and you probably would be inclined to agree with some of my commentary on this. And unfortunately, that is the case. No one does the background. And I did say I saw that image of the pyramids in the old cartoon. The guys, these took us a couple of 100 years to build these things, and I hope they appreciate it in the future. And what they have, a picture of a person in modern day and taking a selfie on this and said, "Oh, aliens must have built these," Probably. The one word that absolutely gets my dander up when I look at students and papers and dissertations and masters, and they're all talking about reimagining this, that, and the other thing, of the social impact of that in the 21st century. I said, oh, mother of God almighty. I absolutely hate that, because all it is a pseudo academic expression or concept to write bullshit. I mean, let's call it what it is. It's reimagining. It's trying to reinforce or to recalibrate past events using today's norms and society. Things have changed. This is the way things were back then. In the day, you know, if you follow that program on RT about punishment in schools and all that, and how we were slapped around the place, literally, and people say, oh, that's shocking, oh, that and said that shouldn't have been. It happened. It was back in the day. It was back then. That's how the norms were. You can't change it. There's no point in saying, well, now if we use our new psychological and psychology approaches, that wouldn't have happened. Maybe not. We don't know. But that's what happened back then. Accept it. It's history. Stop trying to rewrite it. It doesn't make any, it's not going to change things. But at least do the research. Why were things like that? What were the causes? What were the contributory factors that allowed people to be able to behave like that towards children in school and so on and so on? What was acceptable and what's not acceptable? And understand those confines and say, right, this is what we've learned from those environments. This is how we can prevent or avoid those type of repetitions in future. Don't try and say, now this is what it is, and enforce it back in there and say that was all wrong and so on. And that's what has me concerned, because there's not enough in-depth research. And there was a great German philosopher, actually, you know, his comedy Van Gates was, there is nothing worse than arguing with an ignorant man. And precisely what he's alluding to was ignorance of the subject matter. And someone that doesn't, they just keep battering on, belting out the same old tripe, and they don't have substantive underpinning arguments or points to make. Okay, so that's my rant. But again, if we just take a look at this, you know, people having an uninformed opinion about something they don't understand, and this is again the same thing. Just because you're right doesn't mean I am wrong. So you have to have seen life from my side, or both sides. And that's the whole point about empathy and emotional intelligence. You may not be able to walk over from here to here, but you have to have the emotional intelligence and, I was going to say maturity, but it's the wrong word. The emotional intelligence, the empathy, to take on board what this person is saying, such that you can understand what they're saying and come to the happy medium. Yes, from over here is 6, from over here it's a 9. And here's a trick question for you. What other symbol could you use instead of the 6 and 9?
Yin and yang.
No, not yin and yang. I'll say it will look the same on the ground in front of you. Any other? This is how to say, a kind of psychometric test.
M and W.
Spot on. Who said that?
Me. Arena.
Me? Who's me? I guess.
Arena.
Excellent. No, absolutely. M and W would be also they have the same effect as. I know it sounds like a simple question, but it actually forces you to think. Well, let's go through the alphabet and so on and so forth to come up with other symbols or numbers. That's why I said what other symbol. I didn't want to be too explicit. Anyway, how we done time-wise? So, self-awareness, social awareness, and we look at these: our emotional intelligence, our self-management, and our relationship management. So we have the inner side of ourselves here, that's us, and then our interaction. It's the other side of the Venn diagram we showed earlier on, the self and the community and so on. So here we look at, you know, relationship management, you know, developing others, you know, helping people, you know, providing information, giving time, giving feedback, encouragement, motivation, and so on, helping to develop others, teach. Inspirational leadership, you know, when we look at it this way, if we're trying to provide leadership or looking for leadership, it feeds back. But notice it's a cycle. Now, if I were to draw that even more precisely, I'd have that as a spiral, because with each iteration, we get better. We learn. We learn new stuff. We learn what worked, what didn't work. And and this happens instinctively through maturity, aging, and experience, generally speaking, until you get to my level and you just turn into a cranky old fart. Anyway, so in terms of our social awareness, so emotional self-awareness of yourself, so knowing yourself and being true to yourself, then you will be able to interact more effectively in a social environment. You'll drop the guard, the shoulders, you know the way it's like I don't know, first date and the tense, and once you break the ice, then everything kind of flows. You hope, unless you're looking at that tripod and first dates on television. Jeez, it's only for television, thank God. It isn't real life. At least I don't think it is. So accurate self-assessment, knowing yourself. That's why I emphasized the point about doing the assessments and doing them accurately, openly, and honestly, so that you get an accurate evaluation of who you are in your self-awareness. That's what I'm driving for you in the first suite of tests, your self-awareness, and then we move in towards the social realms when we look at leadership and followership. So conscientiousness, adaptability, optimism, and achievement orientation. We start an initiative, take responsibility for how you're going to achieve things from self-management. And that may even going to the team and asking for more work, or going to your manager and asking for more responsibility and so on, as part of your own self-management, self-development and growth. The formal mechanisms will be through your appraisal systems, or through your performance appraisals and so on, or 360 performance systems, whatever you have in your organizations. But taking on more or not. You might not want to do something inside and work as part of your self-management. You might want to look at some other, create opportunities for yourself externally, your next job, your next organization. In any case, you have to have a sense of purpose, your vision, your mission. Why am I here? Where do I see myself going? Okay. Where else are we going here? So, emotional intelligence, IQs and EQs started, the EQ side of it started to come into the equation in around the mid to late 90s and so on. So emotional intelligence predicts success. Ooh, that's going to be a difficult one to explain. Emotional intelligence predicted, and you'd almost, again, this is for, trust in the Holy Trinity kind of thing. Not that I'm religious or a-religious, but you have to have a level of faith and belief in what's happening, and trusting your gut feeling. So when you're talking about predicting success for emotional, with respect to emotional intelligence, you could almost identify the characteristics and so on. Why is that person successful? Now, they may not be positive. It may be negative. He may be a total blackguard, and he's perceived to be successful. But then again, you have to measure, what are you measuring in terms of success? Is it his wealth, the number of holidays to take, or is it his network? You can have very, on the surface, very successful appearing people, but how many actual friends do they have? It's when you look at the total package, then you begin to see, what is success? How do you measure it? Define the concept. Everything is a concept. Success is a concept. Intelligence is a concept. Emotion is a concept. So how do you put these together and define them? And how do you make sense of these for yourself? So emotional competencies can be developed. In other words, how effectively we pick up on things. Point in case, yesterday we went into town and into Dublin, and I was walking down. We were coming down. Where was it? Just off Grafton Street, heading back towards Brown Thomas. Had the car parked in there, and not dropping names that I was shopping in Brown Thomas. No freaking way would I shop in a freaking rip-off. Anyone here working in Brown Thomas? No, assume not. But anyway, the point about it was, there was this lady and her kid walking towards us, maybe 3 years of age, and my wife and I are coming, and she walked straight through the two of us, and my wife said, "Did you see that?" And I said, "I did, of course." But I said, "But I saw it happening before it happened." She said, "What do you mean?" I said, I glanced at her and I could see her eyes raising. She was trying to be assertive. And she said, "How do you mean?" And I said, she was being assertive. She was using the kid to maintain her direction. on the footpath or on the road as such. There was no way of she stopping or holding the kid aside while us, who were older than her, were going to be facilitated. Let's just put it that way. But you could say, so I'd already picked up on the signals, and that's what I'm saying is you develop these. Now I could have stood my ground. I could have countered her move by stopping to my wife and saying, "Oh, look at this window here. Look inside. Look at the price of those bloody shoes in Brown Thomas. Mother of God, you buy a car for the left shoe alone." But anyway, could have done that and distract, and she would have had to walk around. And you're saying, Jesus, Mark, you're really overthinking things. But this is the kind of stuff we're talking about. How to pick up on these signals. Did I want to? No, I didn't. I could see what was happening. Was it worth the energy to stop? And no, it wasn't. Just keep going. Separate out. Let her walk through with the kid. And I could actually see, could have sensed that she was doing this. Was she embarrassed about it? A little bit difficult to say, but had I taken a bit more time, maybe I would have discerned that maybe she was genuinely upset about the kid and the kid was being a little nuisance at the time or not. But generally speaking, I could see that she glanced up. There was no way of she moving with the kid, and we were going to have to move to one side or the other and so on. But that's the kind of stuff, and that's only in a simple social environment. So how switched on are you when you're in certain situations? Can you see something coming down the road in a meeting? Can you predict the way things are happening in a team meeting, for example? Can you see the way certain moods and emotions are evolving that are going to drive particular agenda inside in a meeting? This is where your emotional competence need to be developed. You need to be able to be aware and pick up on things. And we can be well, just on the final point there, it takes time to acquire these new competencies. It does, but you can practice them. You can actually, but you need to be able to stand back and take it at pace. Sometimes these things can happen so quickly you don't even see them happening. But if you're in a meeting situation, oftentimes a presenter makes a mistake of going in and being fully gung-ho and totally enthusiastic, and saying, geez, they're so enthused by their own ideas, and so they totally misread the environment or the other players in the room as such, and their project gets shot down, and they're wondering what the freaking hell happened there. What happened? And that's usually the case because of their emotional attachment to their presentation or their argument or their new product introduction or whatever it is. Because of their emotional attachment, they block off the emotions of everything else. They're blocking off all the signals coming into them, and they're misreading, and then they're wondering what the hell has just happened. So this is the real key point about that. You need to develop these competencies. You need to be good at sizing things up, trusting your gut feeling, letting your gut open up to absorbing more of what's happening around you, such that you can work the room, so to speak, and build it. There's no, for example, point in case. A number of years ago, I had a task. Yeah, I was given a piece of work to do. I had to evaluate whether we should develop our own in-house technologies, whether we should license them, or outsource to a third party. And I had to present the cases. And I presented the 3 cases as unbiasedly as possible to the directors and VPs inside in Meteor and Seattle Wireless while I was working with Meteor at the time. The investment was somewhere in the region of 7 million, give or take. And we had finance, operations, IT, the CEO himself or president, my boss who was vice president of product and development, and commercialization. Who else was there? HR was there. So you had all the functional directors and vice presidents in at this thing, and little old me up there making this presentation. And I looked around the room and I could see some people were actually sitting back, on their phones. Yeah, that kind of crap going on inside the meeting. And rather than get the ire up and say, you're not paying attention, I continued, but I knew I had to hit key spots. I knew that I needed to draw back in the people that were disconnected, that were kind of gotten, and this is the reason they were losing interest, because I was talking a little bit too technical about the product or the possible solutions. And then I had to pull it back and start talking a little bit more about the staff development and about the finances and so on. So I could see people, and you could actually see people, the phone going down and the hand come up maybe, or the two hands, and in one or two instances they actually begin to lean forward, and that's a clear sign of people regaining interest and so on. But I was able to pick up on those nuances and so on. But the bottom line was, I knew the end result of what was going to happen, but it was interesting to play the room around and watch how these things happen. But it was a really good experience. As I said, I haven't forgotten it. I remember it to this day, all and the characters and who was playing. And one guy just absolutely vehemently refused to want to have anything other than, I have 30 of my own staff, they're all in IT, and these guys could do this themselves. I can't see why we'd have to do this. And no matter what I was saying to try and convince him, he wasn't having any of it. And the CEO just turned around to me, Mark, what is your preferred solution? I just said, well, looking at the cost and the balance of the business case presented, I would outsource it to a third party, free up our own staff to take on other stuff and so on and so forth. Well, I think I'd go with that. And of course, he had such respect, no one was going to disagree with him. But for subsequent meetings, the IT director was constantly on my case. Oh, we could have done this better and that. And so I disarmed him by always having really good progress reports upfront and frequent. Because if I didn't come back to him, and if I came back in 6 months' time and say, here we are now, and so on, so you never told us, you never involved us, and didn't do that, and the other, kept him in the loop and the picture every step of the way, and showed how his guys were needed to integrate the systems and so on, so on, so on. But that's just an anecdotal story on developing these emotional competencies. I mean, it's important. So again, just to recapitulate, self-awareness, self-regulation, self-motivation, awareness of others, empathy, and then your social skills. So these are the key points you have to develop over time. But the absolute starting point, and this is up here in terms of self-awareness, you need to have your benchmark. You need to carry out tests. Now, you could, if you like, just continuously do all sorts of emotional. There are hundreds of different emotional tests. Who's the guy's book I have here? Jesus, I should have thought of this. I do actually have a library here beside me. Where are the guys? Where is he? Research learning. Sorry about this, folks. I just have to. I can see the cover of the book in my mind's eye, and I will dig it out at some stage. Not leadership. There's a bucket load of stuff on leadership. NLP. Nope. One. I can't think of it. I'll find it and scan it for next week, the cover of it. But it has all these tests inside it of the prisoner's dilemma and all that sort. There's a whole range of them, and it gives you the scoring mechanisms and all that. And there was a whole raft of these tests. When I was doing a piece of academic work, I had to do something like 60 of these tests and then evaluate them and all this sort of stuff. But they were fascinating. It was great to get an insight. I mean, some scary stuff in there, but nevertheless. Self-awareness. You need to know who you are before you can become aware of who you are. So self-awareness, knowing what you're feeling at various times, using this in decision making, and of course being realistic about our abilities and self-confidence in a grounded way. So don't oversell yourself to yourself. I'm not talking about to others. Don't overpromise to others, that's one thing. But don't overcommit yourself. We know our limitations. But our nature would not normally be to take the easy way out. Scott Adams, Dilbert. Any of you follow Dilbert cartoons or Dogbert? Scott Adams, one of my favorite ones is the manager or the boss. Dilbert to the boss. Or the boss to Dilbert. Renounce engineering, become a manager, take the easy way out. Lovely saying. But anyway, in reality, we don't all want the easy way out. We like, I mean, our human nature is to want to achieve, and we want to better ourselves. So we need to know how to stretch ourselves and push ourselves, and that's down to the level of drive. Sometimes we need external motivation, such as possibly losing a job or getting a nice promotion, whatever the case may be. But we like to be able to push ourselves, but we need to be grounded, because if you overextend, invariably what's going to happen, your anxiety levels are going to shoot up, your sleepless nights, and then you won't be able to perform. So it becomes a vicious cycle. So knowing your abilities. Self-regulation kind of follows on from what I was last saying. Managing our emotions to help us use it to get things done. So recovering well from upset, being prepared to wait for results. This, you hear these throwaway comments, pick yourself up and dust yourself down and all that sort of stuff. And essentially, that's just what it's alluding to. But how well we can recover from difficult situations. More importantly, it's how we actually compartmentalize different situations. And one of my annual examples on this program is, for example, let's assume you have a partner, male or female or both or whatever you're into, and you have an argument in the morning. It's a hard-boiled egg and there should have been soft-boiled egg, and all hell breaks loose. And you have an argument, you go out the door. You can't really carry that into work with you at 9 o'clock and take it out on your co-workers or your students or whomever. You've got to say, park that, Mark. That happened this morning. It was an issue the missus and myself had. She won't get it wrong the next. No. I won't get it wrong the next time. But the point is, you leave it there, and you have to be able to cut it off. Do your job, and then on your way home, say, oops, I think it's flowers and chocolates time, or I better grovel for whatever you have to do to reconcile. And some people will say, well, you're carrying all this all day long. No, you've got to be able to compartmentalize it. There's a place for everything, and everything in its place. And similarly with our emotions, because and that's where it does become really challenging, because there can be so many different things, and particularly if you start including family and this, that, and the other thing, friends and relationships, there's so many other bits and pieces and all other engagements that we're involved in above and beyond or outside of work environment, let alone all the different engagements and relationships we'll have within the work environment, co-workers, subordinates, on your team, peers, managers, and so on, customers, suppliers, whatever. You have all these different relationships to manage, so that alone can be emotionally challenging without having to have all of this other stuff going on at the same time. So a competency, an emotional competency, is your ability to be able to compartmentalize these things. And it's one of the strangest ways I started to look at this was more recently. I would have had other techniques before, but I like to go out and cycle and so on, and I like to push my heart. And when I'm talking pushing my heart, I like to push my heart rate pretty hard, and I can 106, 180, just shy of 190 beats per minute for an L61-year-old isn't particularly bad, but it's not so much that as how quickly can I get it back down to acceptable levels, maybe 135, 140. How quickly I can get that down after doing an exertion of a sort. How quickly I can get that back down. And I use the same idea. This is the idea of emotions. How I can get control of my emotions and bring them back down and have some stability. Hence this whole concept of emotional stability. How quickly, and resting heart rate for me would be around 42, give or take. I have had it down to 38, just short of being comatose and in a box. But in any case, it's on absolutely total relaxation. And I don't practice any of these yoga things or anything like that. It's just, and you might say, well, why is he talking about this? Because I have a range of 40 to 185, I'd say. So that's my heart muscle, so I can get it to move up and down, but I like to try and get it up and get it down to a nice level, even pace, and back up to an even pace. The whole thing is about normal functioning levels, stability, continuity. And when I'm able to do that, then I'm comfortable doing what I'm doing. I can spike and how quickly I can come back down again. It's the same with our emotions. We need to be able to have that level of control over the control, if you follow me. Sounds crazy. But being prepared to wait for results. So not, it happens. You do an interview. What's the point in pacing up and down the room, waiting for the results and so on? You'll get them eventually. Or as I would say to when we're talking about emotions and anxieties and so on, a number of us inside here are parents. We probably would have had, well, in my case, I have grandkids who are into teenage years at this stage. Well, not driving yet, so close. But in any case, my own kids when they're driving, and particularly when they go out, take the car for the first time and they go out drive or whatever, and you're pacing up the rooms, or they're going to the first nightclub and staying out late or whatever, and you're pacing the room, and as I say, what for? Plenty of time to worry if there's a blue flashing light coming to the door. Oh, don't be saying that, don't be saying. But that's the reality of it. If something goes wrong, then you need the emotional strength to cope with what's happening, rather than exhausting your energies thinking about what if, and then finding everything is fine. Why? Because it takes us time to build up the trust. So you need to be able to stand back and build a trust. Like if Mark says he's going to be home at 2:00 and he arrives home at 2:30, we give him a bit of latitude, but there's no point in walking up and down the room or worrying from 12:00 until, will he be home at 2:00? No, this and blah, blah, blah. All this. Save it, the emotion, until the event or an event happens. Then you'll need the strength to be able to cope and think clearly. Because if you have muddled yourself with all the anxieties and all the worries, you're clouding your mind with all sorts of scenarios and possibilities that may be far-fetched or may be reasonably based on hearsay, this, that, and the other, and you don't know. It becomes difficult to separate out the real actuality when it does happen, if it happens, from all the other conjured up thoughts, scenarios, and so on and so forth. How am I doing time? Oh, Jesus. Anyway, so self-motivation, using our values to guide us towards challenging goals, persevering in the face of setbacks, and taking the initiative and being flexible to achieve results. Flexible to achieve results, again, if, for example, you were doing a 3 or 4 year degree program and something happens in year 3 and you can't complete half your modules, and it means that you're going to have to repeat maybe a whole semester but with a different group of classmates because for whatever reason, maybe you had to go abroad, do something, I don't know, or you were ill. The whole point about it is you look at the end game. There's no point in fretting and getting anxious about, well, oh, I missed the boat, I missed the opportunity. No, you're just going to come. Remember I talked about the sat nav. You missed the right turn or the left turn, it recalibrates and brings you back en route. Keep that constantly in your mind, that there are always alternative ways, probably even better. You might even have a better learning experience. You might even see something, experience something different in a detour that actually might have a very positive impact on your recalibration or rerouting of your career or whatever the case may be. So social competencies, empathy, sensing others' feelings, needs and concerns, and understanding different perspectives. The 6 and the 9, the WRDM type of thing. So influencing others, building relationships, managing conflict, persuading and leading, and enabling cooperation and teamwork. And that's really when you're looking at from a social skills perspective, being able to read all the other signals, the multiples of channels. It's like having all of your radio stations coming in at once and being able to pick the different ones, give it a little bit of time. That's Nova, that's News Talk, that's RTE, that's Lyric FM, and so on and so forth. And being able to, you know yourself, if you're flicking through, you're actually reading this channel. You're not even listening to the music. You're reading the names and so on. It's like that type of situation. You're assimilating, yeah, because I want this piece of information, or I want that type of music, I want this type, and I want to have, at this time today, it might be a chat show, or it might be Moncrief. do you only say in person on news talk? No, I didn't say that. Anyway, but you might be just wanting to listen to one particular person in that particular station. So this is how we pull all these together and enabling the cooperation of the team. So when we pull all these together, listen to the people in the room, in the group, that we can actually motivate or drive their particular strengths and underpin their competencies by certain types of motivations, actions, and so on, that they impart knowledge that will benefit the team, and then you come up with these meta knowledge, where the contributions of the team. Now, I will come back to this another time when we're in, and it's later on in the lectures, called the SECI model. I told you last week, socialization, externalization, combination, and internalization. It's the thought process, or the thinking process, how we learn stuff. But in this case, you're trying to extract people to create this level of knowledge, combined knowledge. If we only knew what they already know, kind of thing. Now you're in that position, you're extracting what they already know to create this new knowledge. So again, come back to this guy, motivation. For emotional intelligence or emotional literacy to be really meaningful, these ideas need to have value in the outer as well as the inner world. So they should have an impact upon organization and community as well as individual life. So in other words, how you actually manage yourself, motivate yourself, and so on, can you now explicate that to your immediate circle, whether it is your team, organization, social environment, and project those positivities that people can pick up on. Okay, I can't think of anyone in the right mind wanting to project negativity. It happens in toxic environments, to be honest with you. But nevertheless, if you're genuinely honest and have integrity, you'll want to be projecting the positivities, accentuating the positive and all that sort of stuff. But people will pick up on it. But here's the remarkable thing about it. You'll know that people are picking up on the positivity, and you'll get the feedback, and it becomes symbiotic for all intents and purposes, and it feeds a mutual feeding type situation. It expands it and grows it even more so. It's often referred to as enthusiasm, and sometimes it can get the better of us. So, EI questionnaire, blah, 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 not covering that, don't need to. What are your strengths? What's important to you? Which do you want to develop in terms of your strengths, and what would success in the skill look like for you? Whether it's a skill in communications, or skill in reading people, or skill in leading teams, and our skills in problem solving through teamwork and so on. You can be taught all of the different techniques, but it does require the person to enable and use the techniques and use them effectively. As I said, there's no point in having a Ferrari engine in a mini car if you're not able to drive. So how could you develop the skill itself? One example, I had a chap, I think I might have mentioned, oh no I didn't. Oh God, I know, I'm doing it again, sorry. These are the questions I was talking about. I had one chap who was particularly technically smart. He was really good in this particular area of work. And there was a team leader's role coming up, and I really wanted him to take the job. It was in one of my other departments years ago, and Pando come around to us that he didn't want it. He didn't, and I know I'm breaking the rule here. You have to want to lead. To be a leader, you would have all the other attributes, but if you don't want to lead and so on. But the reason he didn't want to leave was an issue around confidence and interworking with teams and public speaking in particular. So I said, no problem. Do you know what you'll do? I said, go down and join Toastmasters down in Ennis. And he did. I left him off of that for about 5 or 6 months nearly. And he started to come back with a spring in his step. Then I could see that he had the confidence. I said, this guy could take over the team and would lead them, because he already had the technical knowledge of the business. He was very well respected. Now I needed to get that out of his head, to share it with the other people, and get him to nurture a whole group of mini Franks. His name was Frank. Mini Franks to develop, and we would actually grow that whole section far more efficiently in doing so. So yeah, it was a bit of a gamble. I had to hold off for a while to see could he come around, and he did. But yeah, it was just one of those type of situations. So in organizational and community life, so what would an emotionally intelligent practice or PCT be like? Interesting. How would it work internally and externally, and what difference would being emotionally intelligent make to patients and the local community? I don't want to even attempt to go and answer that, but you're going to have to make from that for yourselves. If an emotionally intelligent practice, are you a childcare practice? Are you an early school care practice? Are you a doctor's practice? Are you an architect's practice? Pick one of those examples and say how it would affect and what does it mean internally and externally. Dealing with if you were, for example, it was a childcare or creche type of situation. I mean, you're dealing with totally different people, the kids and their parents. Do you treat them the same? You could try. Sometimes it'll work. But generally speaking, no. You have to have, and so again, what difference would be emotional intelligence? How much? So you can talk about real polar behavior from dealing with children to dealing with adults, and so on. So those kind of soft skills. So emotional intelligence, knowing your emotions, managing your emotions, motivating yourselves, handling relationships, recognizing emotions in others, and where is that? It's not on this wall. It's no. That's up a picture off my wall. Must be. Oh no, I took it down. It's an actual tile, right? Don't need to. But if you can see it there, what matters most is how you see yourself. And to be honest with you, that's absolutely true. You being truthful and being honest with yourself and seeing yourself, not projecting this false image of yourself, but being confident, relaxed, to a point that you know when you need to push your own energies and pull back. When you have that level of self-control, emotional stability, cognitive ability, then the ball starts to roll in the right direction for you. Reduce, and we will clear. Not bad. 5 minutes left. Any questions? Comments, insults, or jokes even? Are you all highly charged emotionally at this stage?
Very good presentation again, Mark. Thank you very much.
Not at all. You're more than welcome, Brendan. I know you would have noticed in my presentations, apart from the odd bit of humor and so on and so forth, there are certain points at which I become emotionally charged as well. And you will have picked up from my facial expressions certain times where I'm really into it as such. And that's purposefully done. Now, is it fair to say that, how would I say this? When I do so, it's because I would have the confidence in knowing what I'm talking about and saying based on the experiences, not all the stuff that I would have read and so on and so forth, but primarily based on experiences and being corroborated with material that I would have read and said, that's my understanding. It's not to say that in all instances it's absolute and it's perfect and right thing. I mean, who am I to say, for crying out loud, that that's the case? But at least, I would say that I
Mary, sir, I can't hear you. What? I'm in the garage.
it's in the garage.
Sorry.
Sorry, no, I won't mention names.
No, it's alright.
Oh, dear, priceless. Oh, I love it. That's the second time this. Ah, no, sorry. It's just, I heard her and.
I didn't even know it was on. Like, it's like, too
No.
late. It's getting too late.
It is indeed. No, there's someone shouting, I'm in the garage. What? I'm in the garage. No, sorry. Oh, brilliant, Joe. Jeez, I can't better that. No, I mean that's stolen the show. Anyway, seriously, but just as we wrap up, do we have any questions or comments or insights? This is only emotional intelligence part 1. And in actual fact, what I will do now is, not now, but maybe tomorrow night, there's a concept that I've mentioned to you before, design thinking. I'll do a separate video. I won't do a video presentation to yourselves. I'll do a separate video. I'll talk to the wall or talk to the mirror, whatever I have to do, and make this presentation on. It's short enough. It'll only be about a half an hour, I'd say, and I'll upload that. But it's fundamentally, it's really a brilliant technique, design thinking, which uses empathy, emotional intelligence to solve problems, no matter what it is, or come up with ideas, or change things, and so on. So I'll give you the nuts and bolts of this design thinking concept in a separate video, so as we don't start eating into our lecture time and going off on too many tangents, as the case may be. And yeah, it's that's it. So listen, folks. On that note, I will call it a night, and we will see you next week, please God. Unless there are any other questions, comments, insults, jokes.
No, thank you, Mark.
Okie dokie, folks.
One thing, Mark.
Yes. Yeah?
Thanks, Mark.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to ask you, the way the assignment is due on the 18th of October,
Yeah.
but you can say, you can submit, did you say in Moodle that you can submit any time after a certain date? Is that what it is? But the final date is the 18th of October. Is that
Absolutely. I usually have Moodle open maybe a week or 10 days. I think it's actually open from the beginning of October that you can start submitting stuff into it, or submitting your assignments in there. And I don't have the submission date of the 18th isn't absolute insofar as that if you miss 5 to 12 on the night of the 18th, that's it. Oh, no, that's the due date when it's in. It will still accept the following days afterwards, but it just comes up in red that the submission is overdue and so on and so forth, But no, I this isn't, people are generally, as I say, we're adults, we tend to like to get things done and get them out of the way as well, This isn't, so no, yeah, it's open early. You can submit any time after that. But I would say that just hold off until you get some more material and get a couple of lectures under the belt, to help you get more out of the actual. I mean, you'd actually do that assignment in I'm not joking. You do it on a Sunday afternoon.
okay. Brilliant.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Okay.
Brendan.
Okay, folks.
Thank
No
you.
more. Okay, folks. See you next week. Take it easy.
See you next week. Thanks,
God
Brendan.
bless. Bye bye.